Maria Castellano couldn't see anything. But what she heard that night changed. Dean Martin forever. Among 1,200 people in the Sands Hotel Copa room, only she truly understood who Dean really was. It was April 15, 1966. Las Vegas, Nevada. The air inside the Copa room was thick with cigarette smoke and expensive perfume. Dean Martin was in the middle of his second show of the evening, and the energy was electric in that special Vegas way. Fancy, a little drunk, totally glamorous. Dean had just finished That's Amore to tons of applause and was now standing at the microphone with his signature cocktail glass, looking every bit the super cool entertainer the world had fallen in love with. He was wearing a perfectly fitted tuxedo, his dark hair slicked back, and that famous half-smile on his lips like he was in on a joke nobody else understood. The audience of 1,200 was eating it up. Big spenders, celebrities, tourists who'd paid a lot of money for a table. Everyone laughing at Dean's casual jokes, buying into the character of the man who didn't care about anything except his next drink and his next laugh. But in Section B, Table 7, sat a little girl who experienced this performance completely differently than everyone else. 10-year-old Maria Castellano had been blind since birth, but her love for Dean Martin's music ran deeper than most people who could see him perform. She knew every song, every vocal detail, every subtle shift in tone. That showed the real man behind the martini glass and the jokes. Maria's parents, Antonio and Rosa Castellano, had saved for 6 months to afford this trip from their small apartment in Brooklyn. Antonio worked as a tailor, and Rosa cleaned houses. They knew their daughter couldn't see Dean Martin, but they also knew that for Maria, hearing him live would be like seeing straight into his soul. "Papa, is he really there?" Maria whispered in Italian as the crowd laughed at one of Dean's throwaway jokes. Her small hands were pressed together in her lap, shaking with excitement. Antonio squeezed her hand, tears forming in his eyes. "Yes, Barmina. He's right there, 20 feet away." What Antonio didn't know was that Maria had been preparing for this moment her entire young life. Every night for the past 4 years, she would sit by the family's old record player and listen to Dean's albums. She had memorized not just the lyrics, but the way Dean breathed between phrases, the subtle changes in his voice when he was being real versus when he was playing the clown. And Maria had discovered something that most people who could see Dean Martin never noticed. Beneath all the laughter and the casual charm there was a sadness, a loneliness that reminded her of how she sometimes felt, being different from other children. Dean was changing now, moving away from the upbeat songs into something slower. The Copa room lights dimmed slightly. The crowd settled down, drinks in hand, getting ready for the more personal part of the show. "You know," Dean said into the microphone, his voice carrying that smooth, whiskey-warm tone. "I'm supposed to do this next song at the piano, but I'm not sure where the piano player went. I think he's at the bar." The crowd laughed. Dean took a sip from his glass, which everyone thought was whiskey, but was actually apple juice. The drunk act was exactly that, an act. He walked over to the white grand piano at stage left and sat down. This was always Maria's favorite part of any Dean Martin recording, when he sang the ballads. When the jokes stopped and the real Dean came out, if only for a few minutes. Dean's fingers found the opening chords of Everybody Loves Somebody. This was Maria's favorite song in the entire world. Her mother had sung it to her as a lullaby when she was little. She had memorized every note, every pause, every breath. As Dean began to sing, Maria's heart filled with something she couldn't quite name. It was joy, but it was also heartbreak. Because she could hear it now. That loneliness in his voice that nobody else seemed to notice. Everybody loves somebody sometime. Everybody falls in love somehow. Dean's voice filled the Copa room with that sweet, easy tone that had made him one of the biggest stars in the world. But then something amazing happened. From somewhere in the crowd, a second voice joined his. It was high, clear, and totally perfect in pitch. It was the voice of an angel. Dean stopped singing mid-phrase. His hands froze on the piano keys. The Copa room band, confused by the sudden silence, slowly stopped playing. For a moment, the only sound in the 1,200-seat showroom was that pure innocent voice continuing the song alone. Something in my heart keeps saying my someday will come along. The audience began to quiet down, confused by what was happening. Some people started looking around, trying to figure out where that beautiful voice was coming from. Dean Martin didn't move. He just sat there at the piano, staring out into the darkness of the audience, that famous half-smile completely gone from his face. In all his years of performing, from his days with Jerry Lewis to his solo career to his countless nights in Vegas, he had never heard anything quite like this. "Hold on, folks," Dean said quietly into the microphone. His voice, usually so full of practiced casualness, now carried something raw, something real. "I need to find out where that angel is hiding." He stood up from the piano and walked to the edge of the stage, blocking his eyes from the spotlight. "Keep singing, honey. Let me find you." Maria, totally unaware that she had stopped an entire Dean Martin concert, kept singing the song that had become the soundtrack to her dreams. Her parents sat frozen in shock, realizing that their daughter's voice had somehow reached the man himself. Other audience members began to turn and look at the little girl with the golden voice, sitting in Section B. "There," Dean said, pointing in Maria's general direction. "Table 7, the little girl in the white dress." Security guards started moving, but Dean held up his hand. "No. Wait. I got this." He stepped down from the stage, something he never did during his Vegas shows, and began walking through the crowd toward Maria. As Dean got closer, he could see Maria more clearly. She was small for her 10 years, with long dark hair and the sweetest face he had ever seen. But there was something else he noticed. The way she wasn't looking directly at him like everyone else. Her eyes, though bright and beautiful, didn't focus on him as he got closer. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Dean asked gently, kneeling down beside Maria's chair. The crowd around them had gone completely silent, trying to hear every word. Maria turned toward his voice, her face lighting up with the most radiant smile Dean had ever seen. "My name is Maria Castellano, and I think you're the most wonderful singer in the whole world, Mr. Martin." Dean felt something shift in his chest, a crack in the armor he'd spent years building. "Maria," Dean said softly. "That's a beautiful name for a beautiful voice. How old are you, honey?" "I'm 10 years old," Maria replied. Her hands reached out slightly, trying to locate exactly where Dean was. It was then that Dean Martin understood. This precious little girl couldn't see him. For a man who had built an entire career on image, the cool guy, the casual charmer, the man who didn't take anything seriously, being truly seen by someone who couldn't see it all was deeply confusing. "Maria," Dean said, his voice catching slightly, "would you like to come up on stage with me?" The Copa room exploded in applause, but Dean barely heard it. He was focused entirely on Maria, who had just nodded enthusiastically. "Papa," Maria whispered to her father, who was now crying openly. "Did Mr. Martin just Ask me to sing with him. Yes. Barmina, Antonio managed to say. He wants you to sing with him. Dean gently took Maria's hand. Don't worry, sweetheart. I've got you. As they walked toward the stage, Dean realized he was experiencing something he had never felt before in his entire career. He was scared. Not of performing. He'd done that 10,000 times, but scared of being truly seen by this little girl who couldn't see it all but saw more clearly than anyone with perfect vision. Helping Maria up onto the stage, Dean was struck by how small and delicate she seemed under the bright lights. But there was also something incredibly strong about her. A confidence that came from years of navigating the world without sight. You nervous, honey? Dean asked. Maria smiled. No, Mr. Martin. I've been waiting my whole life for this. I've dreamed about singing with you so many times. Her words hit Dean like a physical punch. He had to take a moment to pull himself together. Well, Dean said, his voice thick with emotion that the audience had never heard from him before. I reckon we better make this dream come true. He led Maria over to the piano and helped her sit on the bench beside him. The 1,200 people in the Copa room had gone completely silent, understanding that they were witnessing something extraordinary. Maria, Dean said, his voice now carrying through the microphone for everyone to hear. This young lady has just taught me something about singing, about really singing. So, we're going to do this together. And if I mess up, you just keep going, okay? Maria giggled. You won't mess up, Mr. Martin. You never do. Dean looked at her for a long moment. Then, very quietly, so only she could hear, he said, You'd be surprised, sweetheart. He began playing the opening chords of Everybody Loves Somebody Again. But this time when he started singing, Maria's voice joined his from the very first note. What happened next was something that nobody in that Copa room would ever forget. Dean Martin and Maria Castellano sang together, their voices blending in a way that seemed impossible. The cool, smooth, deep voice of the man who never let anyone see him sweat, and the pure, innocent, high voice of a little girl who had never seen anything, but somehow saw everything. As they sang, something began to happen to Dean. That famous half-smile was gone. The casual posture gone. The man who always looked like he'd rather be somewhere else was completely present, completely focused on this moment, this song, this little girl beside him. Tears were streaming down his face. Dean Martin, the man who joked through everything, who never let them see him care, was crying in front of 1,200 people. Everybody loves somebody. And although my dream was overdue, your love made it all worth waiting for. Someone like you. When the song ended, the Copa room exploded, but it wasn't the usual Vegas applause, the polite appreciation of a good show. This was something else, something raw and real. People were on their feet crying, applauding not just for the performance, but for the moment of genuine human connection they had just witnessed. Dean sat at the piano, one arm around Maria, unable to speak. Maria turned her face toward his. Mr. Martin, are you crying? Dean laughed, wiping his eyes. Yeah, sweetheart. I guess I am. Why? Dean was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Because you just showed me something I forgot a long time ago. You showed me it's okay to let people see you, the real you. Maria smiled. I always see the real you, Mr. Martin. Every time you sing. That's why I love your music so much, because you can't hide when you sing. Those words, simple words from a 10-year-old girl, hit Dean harder than anything anyone had ever said to him. She was right. He could joke through his entire show, pretend nothing mattered. Play the drunk, play the cool guy. But when he sang, really sang the truth, came through. And this little girl who couldn't see his perfectly fitted tuxedo or his movie star face or his carefully created character heard that truth every single time. Dean hugged Maria close. Thank you, sweetheart. You just gave me the best performance of my life. He stood up and spoke to the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Maria Castellano. The applause was deafening. As Dean helped Maria back to her parents' table, he knelt down beside Antonio and Rosa. Your daughter, Dean said, his voice still thick with emotion, is an angel, and she just taught me more about singing than I learned in 30 years. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. Here's my manager's number. I want Maria to have voice lessons. The best money can buy. I'm paying for it. No arguments. Antonio started to protest, but Dean held up his hand. Please let me do this. She's got something special and the world needs to hear it. Before he left their table, Dean leaned close to Maria. Will you do something for me? Honey? Anything, Mr. Martin. Promise me. Because when you sing, you show people it's okay to be real, and the world needs that more than you know. I promise, Maria said. Dean kissed her forehead and walked back to the stage. The rest of the show was different. Dean dropped the drunk act. He told fewer jokes. He just sang. Really sang in a way that Vegas audiences had never heard from him before. After the show, word spread throughout Las Vegas about what had happened. By the next morning, every newspaper in town was running the story. Entertainment reporters, who usually covered Dean with a knowing wink, playing along with his carefully built image, wrote about the moment with genuine emotion. Last night at the Sands Hotel, wrote one Vegas columnist, Dean Martin let us see the man behind the martini glass, and it was more moving than any performance he's ever given. Dean arranged for Maria and her family to stay in Vegas for 3 more days, all expenses paid. Maria visited Dean's dressing room each evening before his shows. They would sit at his piano and sing together, just the two of them, with no audience, no pressure, no image to maintain. During those sessions, Dean opened up to Maria in ways he never had with anyone else. You know what's funny, sweetheart? Dean said one evening. I've spent my whole life trying to make people think I don't care about anything, and you're the first person who saw through that without even looking. Maria smiled. That's because I listen, Mr. Martin. Really listen, and your voice tells me everything. True to his word, Dean arranged for Maria to study with the best voice teachers in New York. He paid for her lessons throughout her childhood and into her college years. They stayed in touch through letters and occasional phone calls. As Maria grew older and her voice got better, she became a professional opera singer, performing at major venues around the world. But she always said that night in the Copa room as the moment that shaped her entire life. Dean Martin taught me that the most powerful thing you can do is be vulnerable. Maria would tell interviewers years later. He showed me that letting people see your true self isn't weakness, it's courage. Dean's own performances changed after that night, too. He never fully dropped his cool guy character. It was too ingrained, too much a part of his brand. But there were moments in his later shows, especially in his ballads, where he would let that mask slip just a little, where he would let the audience see Dean Crocetti from Steubenville, Ohio, instead of Dean Martin, Vegas superstar. Those were always the moments that audiences remembered most. In 1987, when Dean's Son Dino was killed in a plane crash. Maria flew from New York to Los Angeles to be with him. She sat with Dean in his grief. And together they sang Everybody Love Somebody One More Time. Just the two of them. No audience, no performance, just two people who understood what it meant to be truly seen. You saved me once, sweetheart, Dean told her through his tears. That night in Vegas, when I forgot who I really was, you reminded me it was okay to feel things. Maria held his hand and, you saved me, Mr. Martin. You showed me that my voice could touch people, that I could make a difference. After Dean's death in 1995, Maria established the Dean Martin Foundation for Young Musicians, focusing specifically on providing music education to children with disabilities. The foundation's motto, taken from what Dean had told her that night in the Copa room, was "The real you is the best you." Today, the foundation has helped thousands of children discover their voices, both literally and figuratively. The story of Dean Martin and Maria Castellano is still told in Vegas, though the Sands Hotel where it happened was torn down in 1996. But those who were in the Copa room that April night in 1966 never forgot what they witnessed. The moment when the coolest man in show business let his guard down and showed the world his heart. A bootleg recording of that performance exists. Grainy audio from someone's hidden tape recorder. The sound quality is poor, but you can hear Dean's voice crack with emotion. You can hear Maria's pure high voice joining his. And if you listen very carefully at the end, you can hear Dean Martin, the man who never let anyone see him sweat, quietly crying. It's one of the most treasured recordings in Dean Martin's archive. Not because of its technical quality, but because it captured the moment when a blind girl taught one of the world's biggest stars how to truly see. Maria Castellano, now in her 60s, still performs occasionally. And whenever she does, she always includes Everybody Loves Somebody in her repertoire. When I sing that song, she says, I'm back in the Copa room with Dean. And I'm reminding everyone that the most beautiful moments in life happen when we stop performing and start being real. When we let people see us, really see us. Flaws and fears and all. That night in Vegas, among cigarette smoke and cocktails and carefully maintained images, a little girl who couldn't see anything showed a superstar how to be seen. And in doing so, she gave the world a glimpse of the real Dean Martin, the man who sang like an angel and cared like a father, even when he was pretending he didn't care about anything at all. If this incredible story of vulnerability and connection moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit that thumbs up button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear about the courage it takes to be real. What song has helped you see through someone's carefully built walls? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to ring that notification bell for more amazing stories about the humanity behind Hollywood's greatest legends.